Hello. So, for my economics project, I decided to do something a little fun, I thought. So I'm doing it on the Tiffany lamp. And if you don't know what the Tiffany lamp is, it is also referred to as the stained glass lamp as well. And then to just jump right in, just a really small little bit of history to maybe help you understand what it is if you don't know. Um, this picture on the right might give you an idea of the stained glass that we're talking about. So, like the churches with the big ornate um, pictures in glass, in the big churches and stuff like that, like in the Roman Empire and such. So, really cool, really pretty stuff. So, but the Tiffany lamps, they were, the first one was made in 1895 by a team of craftsmen, and that was from the company called Tiffany Studios, which was owned by Louis Comfort Tiffany, who was the brother of, I can't fully remember his name, but one of the founders of Tiffany & Co. Jewelry. And then something interesting that I found out was that before they made Tiffany lamps, Tiffany Studios actually did stained glass windows, which I thought was really cool. And then to jump into a more economic side of things, the market for Tiffany lamps. So there's a pretty large market for Tiffany lamps in general. So for both, consumers and like collectors and museums and whatnot, there's a lot to go around. And then, so there's two different types of lamps when it comes to Tiffany lamps. There's the authentic Tiffany lamps, which are just called that. And then there's Tiffany style lamps, which are the lamps that are imitating the Tiffany ones as well, which a lot of times are much cheaper than original Tiffany lamps, which makes it really easy for consumers nowadays to be able to get something like that as well, since a real Tiffany lamp is very difficult to obtain, and you'll see why in just a second here. And then, typically for price-wise, a Tiffany style lamp can cost a couple $100, give or take, depending on what kind it is. And then more in the market side of things, the Tiffany lamps normally are being sold at auction in a private collection from somebody, like in their home or something, or they're in a museum to show off the, artistic and history part of it. But the auctions are really a big part of the Tiffany lamp market. And a main reason for that is because the value of the original Tiffany lamps is quite astounding, since they're so rare and weren't made for that long of a period of time. They were only made in the 20th century, so not a long period at all. So on this slide, that lamp in the top right, that one is going to be called the Pond Lily Table Lamp, which in 2018 at Christie's auction was sold for $3.3 million. And that information came from Miller Wilson 2024. And then another example of an auction or a lamp at auction, is going to be the Pony Wisteria Table Lamp, which sold for $1.6 million. So, as we can see, they are very pricey and very rare, and people pay a lot of money. Which kind of led me to think about, the supply and demand of it. Since the actual Tiffany lamps are so rare, it makes sense that the, you know, the imitation ones, the Tiffany style lamps, there's so many now, and they're really affordable because of that, because there is more of a demand and want for that kind of older style now. So, manufacturers really, got on it, and now there's just a lot of different options when it comes to that kind of market with the Tiffany style lamps. And then I was interested in seeing kind of what the cost to produce a Tiffany lamp would be, but I had a little bit of a difficult time finding that. But I was able to find the original sales price of around when they first came out, and that price was about $400, which is interesting. So it's about the same that a Tiffany style lamp would cost you today. And then as more on the market side of things, we have kind of the global market, since it was kind of already over in Rome and Europe. It's no surprise that it's still quite big over there, and that they took quite an interest in Tiffany Studios, Tiffany lamps as well. And then, so if we kind of get into some of the more economic terms, like a trade-off, let's say, for a trade-off, one of the things could be if you buy a Tiffany style lamp instead of an authentic Tiffany lamp, it could save you thousands of dollars, and that's a pretty big trade-off, pretty decent thing to think about. Although there is a trade-off that may come with that, and that one would be you may trade it for craftsmanship. Since it's going to be less expensive, it's more likely to be manufactured if it's a Tiffany style one rather than handcrafted. And then for opportunity cost, since in the auction part, those are some of the higher selling ones. Normally they can go for a few $1,000s for lower end Tiffany lamps, but they're still not cheap by any means. So as far as an opportunity cost could go, I thought about comparing it to about a week-long vacation, which I think is pretty typical for it to cost a little bit of money depending on where you're going. So, definitely something to think about when you're looking to buy a Tiffany lamp. And then scarcity. So, like I said, they were produced in a very short time span. So, and they haven't been produced since the 20th century. So there's a long period of time where Tiffany lamps haven't been produced. And that, the company doesn't make them anymore. So that's why they go for such a high selling price, and why they are so rare, and why the Tiffany style lamps have been so mass produced to kind of make up for just how rare an actual Tiffany lamp is. And then, so that is everything I have on, an economic view of the Tiffany lamp. And then here are all of my resources that I have here. So thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed.